Hey there, beautiful people. I'm Avis Boone. So glad to have you join me here on That's How We Roll, the podcast where we go behind the curtain, up on stage, or out in the world and talk with professionals, entrepreneurs, business owners, organization leaders, creatives, and artists about their business, their creativity, their goals, and about their lives. And hey, whatever else we want to talk about. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Thank you so much for tuning in to That's How We Roll. And joining me today is actress, playwright, producer, and filmmaker, Ura Yoana Sánchez. As a playwright, she co-wrote the comedy The Jedi, Papi, Chulo, and The Power Pansa, which was first seen at the Latea Theater and the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, as well as Sacred Spaces. Most recently, she has started writing the one-act play anthology series On the Block, of which its first installment, Bodega Cat, was shown at the Pro-Black Theater Festival in February of 2021. As a filmmaker, she produced, wrote, and directed the film Finding Home, which is a tribute to victims of child abuse. This was the freshman project under her own production company, Cuentos De Ada, with the purpose of creating universally relevant film and theater productions. Cuentos De Ada is a play on words meaning fairy tale in Spanish. The literal translation, Tales of Ada. Ada is Yura's mother, whose legacy lives on through the work of this company. Her second short film, Somnio, is currently in post-production. Her third film, As the Ashes Settle, The Fire Stirs, began production in March 2021. It is my pleasure to welcome Ura, and thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited for you to be here. How have you been?
I am super excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, for inviting me. I've been really good. I've been really, really good. You know, this year has been really insane and crazy for everyone. A lot of people have gotten really sick, obviously, but I can say that I'm just so grateful that my family is okay. We're all healthy and safe, and that's the most important thing, you know?
It really is. Nothing else really matters.
It really doesn't. It really, really doesn't. But, you know, then the cherry on top has been the fact that this season has been a season of creation for me. And I just feel so grateful that in this time, I've had time of meditation and really introspection, and to realize and take stock of what's really important to me as a person and as an artist, and to start to write and put out work that matters to me. Things that I maybe before this year, before 2020, before George Floyd, before everything that happened afterwards, maybe I was afraid to speak on certain things. And now I'm in a place where I don't feel that fear anymore. I'm showing up, and I'm showing up with the fullness of how I feel and where I'm at. And good, bad, or ugly, this is what it is. And that's what I'm putting into my work. And I feel incredibly proud of the work that I'm doing, and the people that I've been surrounded by, and the people that I've been working with.
Well, you have been super, super busy. So
yes.
You have so many titles and you have so much work. So you were definitely not bored during this self-imposed hiatus that the world has been on for the past year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, don't get me wrong. I definitely miss the before, but at the same time, I feel like this was something that needed to happen in a sense. Not in the sense of, you know, the loss of life, because that's always senseless, and especially things that, you know, could have been prevented, as we all know. So much of the loss of life that's happened, especially in the United States, but everywhere, it could have been prevented by faster action and, you know, efficient leadership. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. But, you know, that aside, I do miss the socialization and the, you know, meeting with friends and the brunches but unfortunately that's been taken away. And what we're left with is, like you said, with what's really important, which is having the opportunity to both spend time with my family and spend time in introspection, spend time doing inner work, spend time doing just refocusing, like rebalancing my life and what's important to me. And in that sense, I feel like it's been a gift.
Right. Sometimes we do need that refocus and that reigniting of something in us to continue to create work and be passionate about things and about life. That's what it's all about. You work in every area.
Not every area.
Yeah, well, you work in a lot of areas here. So what did you want to do? What did you want to be when you were a little girl?
Oh, my God. When I was a little girl, he's going to kill me for telling you this. When I was a little girl, I wanted to be a marine biologist. My dad was like, that's for white people. and so that dream died really fast.
But at least now you can write yourself as a marine biologist and make a movie.
I need to do that. Yeah, I need to do that. He's going to kill me for saying that, but it's the truth. Yeah, but when I was little, I think what I really wanted to be more than anything, I wanted to be a singer. I'm all right. I could hold a tune, but I'm not a singer. But I could hold a tune. But that was my dream for a very, very long time. And then I just sort of stumbled into acting. I literally stumbled into acting.
And that's what you started doing first before you started writing and making movies. You started acting first.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When I say I stumbled into acting, I was with my sister. This was in high school. We had just moved back to the U.S. from Puerto Rico, or back to New York, I should say, from Puerto Rico. And my sister wanted to be an actress. She was like, so ever since I can remember, my sister wanted to be an actress, and she's actually a really fantastic actress. And she was looking for an after-school program in our high school. We're only 2 years apart, so she was a senior, I was a sophomore. And we literally stumbled into this classroom where they were holding these auditions, I think, for the after-school program. And I just kind of tagged along with her. And it wasn't anything that I wanted to do, but honestly, I can say that one of the first real transformations that I experienced as a person happened when I first got on stage. I used to be a really shy kid to the point where I didn't really talk to people. I would blush when I had to speak out loud. It was really debilitating. And then I started acting, and it just changed me. So yeah, I started acting before I did anything else.
And then how did the writing and producing come into play?
So I started acting, and after my sister graduated high school, she went off to college, and I kept acting. I stayed in the after-school program. The following year, when we came back to school, there was a program. The after-school theater program had been replaced by an organization that had come into our high school called Faces. It was a part of the Maimonides Hospital. It sounds odd, but yeah, Maimonides Hospital in Brooklyn had a, this sounds really bizarre. Maimonides Hospital had a psychiatric psychology department, and that psychology department had a theater program for teens. And so I became a part of that, the Maimonides theater group. But I was a part of that for like 3 or 4 years. I interned with them. I traveled with them. It was my first, real performances that I got to do. But basically, we would have these quote unquote rehearsals where we would talk about life issues, and then we would write sketches about it. And then those sketches became scripts, and those scripts were rehearsed, and then we went off and did shows in different high schools and different places. It was actually pretty cool.
So that was your first, so that's when you started say, hey, I can write stuff.
I started writing when I was a kid, but this was the first time that I actually performed before an audience that wasn't my family.
Okay.
The things that I wrote. But I started writing when I was about 10 or 11, and me and my sister would write sketches and put on backyard talent shows and charge our neighbors to come see our shows.
That was very good.
Yeah, we were hustling from a very young age. We would charge everyone $1 to come see our show. And we did that here. We did that in Puerto Rico. And so that's when I started writing, and it was all like an emulation of the telenovelas that I saw on television that my mom watched. So like all of our scenes were like, they had like gypsies and stepmothers and It was all drama, and it was that stuff is really funny because the more I want to get away from it, the more it like creeps into my writing sometimes, and I'm like, oh, I know what this is. And it's like it's just there. It's just like, oh, this is just a part of the upbringing. I'm sorry.
So what about the directing? You were writing since you were a kid, and so now you have the acting and the writing. How did you know that I want to direct?
I fell into directing. Again, same thing. So I started writing when I was a child, and part of it was thanks to my cousin's wife, Nancy Navarez, who actually just passed away last month, about a month and a half ago. She just passed away. She was a wonderful playwright. She encouraged my sister and I, ever since we were little, to write and create shows, and that's where that came from. And then the directing started with a friend of mine. She and I went to high school together, and we were actually part of the Faces group together. We decided to make a movie together. And at the time, she had this kind of interesting agent. And so he had, quote unquote, hired a DP to shoot the film that we wrote. And at that point, we shot that movie, and it was one of the biggest heartbreaks that we'd experienced because we were both new to like actual production and filmmaking. We had both been actresses, but we had never done that side of it. That DP basically made away with our footage. Then when he finally did give us our footage, he only gave us chunks of the footage. Like, he didn't give us our full footage. And the whole situation was very kind of really messed up. But it led to positive things because what it led me to do was to go to film school. And so I went to film school, and that's where I started directing film. As far as like theater, I had directed theater when I was an undergrad before I went back for film school. I had directed a few shows, including the Vagina Monologues and some other stuff. But I wasn't like really interested in directing until I started doing film. And then that's when I started to understand that I could translate my vision and make other people see and feel what I was seeing and feeling and thinking through film.
Okay. Yes, there's nothing like creating your own work. I just remember I don't even know how this came about or how I even got this job, but years ago, I remember doing a stage reading that you selected me for.
Yes, that was such a long time ago. This was in 2009, and that was before I started going to film school. So before that, I had written the screenplay, and this is one of those things where, you know, as the years have gone by, it's become really, really clear to me that I'm on the path that God wants me to be on. Does that mean that I'm a perfect Christian? No, it does not mean that. Does that mean that I walk on clouds? No. But it definitely does mean that my Father is looking out for me, and I know that He's directing me. He's leading me. And with that particular screenplay, the reason I say that is because I had not written a screenplay before that time. And one day I woke up and I just had this whole entire idea. And that screenplay that you're referring to, the stage reading, actually became a play afterward, and that was Sacred Spaces. So I was casting that stage reading. I think I put it up on Actors Access or something like that, and you submitted for it, and then we did it. And that was in 2009.
Wow.
So, and that's how that happened. So that was one of those things where it's like, I don't know, it was just clear to me. At least it is now in retrospect. Maybe at the moment it wasn't that clear, but in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, this definitely was God leading me into writing and directing film.
Well, I never forgot you from that. So my submitting for that, it was a long time ago. I never forgot it. And I just remember you. I can't remember if your sister was in that or not, but I just,
Yep.
Okay.
It was.
Yeah, okay. So sometimes, I always believe that people come into your life for a particular reason, just for a season, and they sow their crops, and then they go to something else. So
yeah,
I never forgot that. And then I guess I have known you all this time. I didn't even realize.
Yeah, and then we ran into each other on the set of, I don't know if you remember this. This was like two summers ago. We ran into each other on the set of Secession, season 2.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. That's right.
I was an extra, in the courtroom. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was the second time after all those years that we actually saw each other. Wow.
Yeah. That was me. I was like, extra work I have a love-hate relationship with extra work because the love of it is that, you get to be on set and you get to see people doing the craft and you get to see the directors direct and how the crew moves. And all of it is very exciting to me because I love the behind the scenes stuff. But then the hate part obviously comes in the fact that you're an extra.
There's so much to learn,
Yeah.
no matter
So
what. And you are the entire package of whatever it is. And that's good for you because then that way you know what to do and how to treat people when they come onto your set.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to have a set. You're going to have all that. I know it because your path has been clear from the beginning, from the time that I did Sacred Spaces, that reading. Your path has been clear. I do not believe that you have diverged from that path. With what I read in your introduction, you have not slowed down. There's only going to be more greatness ahead. So I want to talk about Bodega Cat.
Yeah. That's kind of big.
Now, first of all, okay, I want to talk about all the other latest projects too, but Bodega Cat, so you had to do this whole thing on Zoom, over Zoom, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You had this film festival, so now you have the film festival experience of submitting this work, and this was the first time, I'm assuming this was the first time that you had done something like this over Zoom.
Well, it was the first time that I had. So what you're referring to as a film festival, that's something that I'm trying out now because this is a virtual theater production. So I uploaded it to one of the sites to try to submit it for experimental film festivals to see if they want to look at it. I don't know, maybe they'd be interested in it. So that's something that I'm trying out. But as far as the performance itself was a live performance via Zoom. And it was a live theater performance. So the point was not to have a lot of more, I couldn't pre-record it and then screen it on Zoom. It had to be happening live. And that, to be honest with you, was terrifying. Because one thing is to have, a live theater performance where you have the audience in the same room. There's a certain, relationship dynamic that happens between the actor and the audience. There is a relationship, there's an agreement, right? When the audience comes into the theater, the lights go down, they agree to suspend their disbelief and turn off their phones and not talk and not interrupt the performance. And all of those things are understood that that's the way that theater works. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But with Zoom is terrifying for live performances because you never know who's going to turn on their mic, who's going to have a glitch, who's going to turn on their camera. And it's akin to someone walking on stage in the middle of your monologue. And so we actually had an incident during our performance where that happened. And I was just like, oh, man, I knew this was going to happen. But it is what it is, That was the first time that I ever did a live virtual performance of that nature. I had done live performances for class. So between March of last year and December of last year, I was finishing up the Atlantic Acting School, a full-time conservatory online. So I had started in person and then we finished it online. So I did all of my performances online. I did all of my Chekhov and my Shakespeare and my everything via virtual performance online. And so I had some experience with how to stage everything and how to do it. But as far as having an audience, where it's I don't even know. At one point, I think one of the performances we had over 100 people. And lo and behold, somebody turned on their camera. And it just is what it is. I mean, you just roll with the punches. You just have to. But it was the first time I ever did that. And it was really, really stressful.
I've attended a lot of Zoom performances. This is a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't know what was going to happen, but we dealt with it and we're dealing with it. The problem is too, your internet could go down. I have a horrible internet connection, and depending on the time of day, it's worse. So
yeah. So
you do run into those difficulties with Zoom performances, but yep. The camera can come on too soon, or you miss your cue.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of that too. I mean, and it was minimal, But we definitely had a moment where, I don't know, he's probably going to kill me for saying this, but one of our actors, Jake, at one point in the middle of one of the transitions on one of the shows, I think he dropped it, like we were eating, like there was like pasta. It was part of the scene. There was 2 plates of pasta. And at one point in one of the transitions, I think he dropped the entire plate of pasta, and it was a lot. But it definitely gave him, like when he came on onto the scene, the next scene that he was performing in. You know, he definitely had a certain urgency to the scene, which I think added to it. To be honest, I don't know. I liked it.
Yeah, sometimes the mistakes make it more interesting and gives you, it allows you to even do more or give a better performance because of that.
Yeah, it lights a fire. It just lights a fire. It makes it real.
And speaking of fire, as the ashes settle, the fire stirs.
Oh, yeah.
That started shooting in March. You know, with the big budget productions, with all the COVID protocols in place, it's a little easier for the Netflix and the Hulu, the Amazon, all those. How did a small production company like yours, how did you manage to make sure that everyone was safe on set? Okay,
so one of the things that helped us tremendously is the fact that we were SAG signatory. And so we're like, I think, ultra low budget or something like that. That's what we were. We were got no money production. And so, but it helped us. It helped us because they sent us like this document with all of these protocols. And essentially it helped us to not, I mean, we had already had an idea of how we were going to do it. You know, having a small crew, making sure that we had double masks and shields and all of that, but also having this list from SAG after actually really helped us because it helped us to communicate, you know, what the needs were to the rest of the crew and the cast, so that it was, you know, it legitimized it to a certain extent. Because, you know, and we didn't have a problem with it because everyone that we had on our casting crew was very cooperative. In addition, some people had already had COVID, and a few of us had already started the vaccination process. So we were in a good place in terms of that. But as far as like the protocols, it was like, you know, constant Purell, double mask, shield. But yeah, the way that I chose to shoot it, no 2 actors were on screen together at the same time facing the camera. So it was a lot of over the shoulder, a lot of tracking, just so that no 2 actors had their mask off at the same time. I did a lot of exteriors. I only went interior when absolutely necessary. And I just, you know, we made it a point to just put safety first. Even with lunch, the way that lunch was done, you know, we packed separate lunches for everyone. And the times that we did have to eat on set, we were all kind of outdoors. So it was all very like, maybe hyper careful, but we were really concerned about people getting sick, and we didn't want that to happen on our watch. So,
and even worse than being sick, this is something that people were dying from, and so you did want to be as safe as possible. There's no such thing as being overprotective or overcautious in the middle of this. And actually, some of the protocols and some of the actions that production companies that they took on this past year and now, I think it's like a safer thing going forward. I mean, I really think that they might keep things kind of the way that they are, except for the excessive testing. I felt this whole time that being on a set was like the safest place because you knew that people were being tested on a regular basis. And still, there were cases where people tested negative for 2 days in a row, but on the 3rd day, they tested positive. There were a lot of false negatives and false positives. But as long as we stayed hyper vigilant about the distance and about wearing masks, we really wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and that's how we dealt with it, you know, and it was great. I mean, it's a 4-person story, so it really wasn't that difficult. It's not like we had a huge ensemble, and we didn't have any extras. We didn't have anything like that. We were just as careful as possible. One thing that I was really adamant about was just shooting it also in a as little amount of time as possible, because the longer you extend or shoot, the more people work, and then they go home and do whatever they're going to do, go out, go to a bar, go whatever, and then they come on set a day or two later. You don't really know what you're getting, And so that was one thing that we pushed for too, was to just shoot it over the weekend. We shot it in 2 days actually, which was insane. And then we also required negative COVID tests from everyone.
How did you go about the testing? Because again, I'm going back to, you're not a big budget production company that has the testing on site. So they just had to go to Walgreens or wherever and come back with it.
Yes, they just went to, I went to NYU and I got it.
So how did you keep motivated? First of all, you were extremely busy, so there was no lack of motivation on your part. But just in case you did have a moment where you didn't have something to do, how did you keep yourself motivated during the pandemic?
Well, when everything first started shutting down, which was was it April?
March.
Was that when everything shut, when we had the lockdown?
Yeah, it was March 12th or 13th. That's when they had a shelter-in-place order.
Right. Okay. Good. So it's a blur for me right now.
Yeah, I know,
but,
right?
When we were doing the shelter-in-place, I was still doing classes online with Atlantic, and I just remember that all of a sudden I got really depressed, like really, really depressed, because I live in an avenue, and it was a constant non-stop sirens, ambulance, like non-stop. It was horrible. And it got to the point where it became kind of like a physiological response to the like emotional, but also like physical response to the constant sirens, and then the fear of not knowing what we were dealing with, and fearing for my family, fearing for myself, fearing for my friends, fearing for the world in general. I got really depressed. And I guess this is part of being a part of a very rigorous program, the conservatory, where I felt like I couldn't stop. But like I have to keep going. I'm not going to quit. I'm not a quitter. So I just remember rehearsing for my scenes, and kind of like I had some conversations with some of my scene partners at one point where I was like, this feels so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like we're make-believing and taking all of this so seriously, and people are like dropping dead like left and right. So I was really demotivated at one point. Like I felt really depressed, but I didn't let it show. Not much anyway. My team partner saw it because I cried a lot. But as far as stopping the work, right? We were talking about Nehemiah earlier, and I felt like I needed to continue the work. I felt like I needed to keep building that wall, no matter what.
Yeah, you had something else to focus on, pretty much. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so I started to resent it at one point. And then I saw the light. I started to kind of like buckle down to record, because I pre-recorded my presentation. Some people didn't, but I did. And I made it kind of like a short film. But when I started to really get into that, that's when I saw the light, and I was just like, nah, I'm actually really lucky. I'm really blessed to be safe, to be home, and I get to continue to do my work. And it wasn't until after the George Floyd incident, where it literally felt like the world was upside down. That's when I really started to see the light, where I was like, nah, this is more than just art, and what we're doing has to mean something. All of this work and all of this training has to be for something, and our work has to mean something. That's the state that I'm in right now. I want to do work that has significance and that means something, and in some way, I want to change my corner of the world in some way.
Right.
Is my assignment in life, that I was still training, and that I still had the opportunity to do so, and that we hadn't halted, and that despite all of this, the horrors and the things that are happening in the world, I had the gift of continuing to train and to better myself as an artist, and what a privilege. And I don't get to say that a lot, because I'm a Black Puerto Rican woman from East New York, Brooklyn. So I'm like, when do I get to say that I'm privileged? But at one point, yeah, I started to feel like incredibly, incredibly blessed and privileged to be able to continue to do my work in the midst of this madness.
with everything that you're doing. What advice can you give to someone looking for a career as a playwright, as an actor, or a producer, or filmmaker? What advice would you give people?
Well, know who you are as a person, because you can only create art from your point of reference, and the best art comes from the depths of you, of your soul. And if you don't know who you are, and you don't know what you stand for, and you don't know what you believe in, it's going to be really hard to make art that touches people. Know who you are, accept who you are, and start from that point of reference. Write what you know. Before you write what you have to know who you are. One of the things that I was told when I first started was, well, you have to pick something. You can't do everything. And I was like, no, I can and I will do everything that I want to do. And now everybody's a multi-hyphenate.
Yes.
You know? And it's like being the multi-hyphenate is like the thing. And lastly, I would say, and this is really interesting, because when you were introducing me and you called me by all of these different titles, there's a part of me that kind of like was like, ooh, who's she talking about? You know? You have to contend with imposter syndrome, and you have to make it a point to contend with it, to know it and call it out for what it is, identify it, and then contend with it, because it can destroy you. You're always learning, you're always growing. You have to accept that life is always evolving, that you're always evolving as an artist, and that you're never at a standstill. Everything is always changing. And you're always going to meet someone that you look up to, or someone who is better, more talented, more experienced, more successful, more fill in the blank than you are. And the important thing is to know that you value as an artist, whether you are making it quote unquote financially or whether you are making it as far as being recognized in this industry or being lauded for your efforts. You have value just because you are a human being and you have something to offer. And there is no such thing as you being an imposter. If you step into the role, that makes you that. If you step into the role of a director, that makes you a director. If you pick up a pen or you open up your Word document and you start writing a play, that makes you a playwright. And I contend with just like many artists, I contend with imposter syndrome all the time, especially in new circles. When I'm invited to be a part of a new circle of people that actually do this thing for a living, and I'm just like, ooh, I'm a fraud. I don't belong here, you know?
And they're probably all feeling the same way.
Exactly. That's the beauty of it. It's that it's a lie, you know?
You named your theater company, well, the legacy of your mom led you to name your theater company. How did your mom inspire you?
Oh my gosh, in every way, shape, and form, as a person, as an artist, as in everything. It's funny because I often joke with my dad, right? My dad also has been a giant in my life. You know, my dad is an incredible inspiration and support and encouragement, and he's just been the best. Everybody says I have the best dad. No, I really do. But the reason why I named my production company, after my mom, is because I often joke with my dad about this, about like, where do I get my artsy-fartsiness from? My mom, she was such an incredible artistic soul. Everything that she did, she made it beautiful and she made it artistic. So if she was rearranging our living room, it looked like a magazine. If she was making dinner, it looked like a catered event. Everything that she did, she just made it beautiful. She used to sing. She gave me my love for stories. You know, my mom was such a storyteller. To meet her was to love her, and to speak with her was to know her whole life story. and many times I find myself questioning whether I'm even able to tell stories the way that she was. But she had her whole repertoire of stories.
Well, obviously that rubbed off on you.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Like when I tell you about the telenovelas, she had her favorite, I don't know if you've ever heard of the book Save the Cat, and it's about film writing, screenplay writing. And in Save the Cat, I think he says there are 7 or 9-ish. Whoever is like a really big fan of this book is going to kill me for like messing this up. But he says there's like 7 or 9 stories, and every movie falls into one of these categories. And so the one that really pops out for me right now that I recall from the book is the Cinderella story. And so what's really funny is that if you look at all of the telenovelas in the Spanish language television, Univision and Telemundo and all of those, so if you look at most of the telenovelas, back in the day, it was all about like the Cinderella story. And over the years, there were, I don't even know how many telenovelas were shown on these channels. But no matter how the surroundings changed, the plot changed, everything, it was basically a Cinderella story. And so what's funny was that my mom was just always gravitated towards Cinderella stories. And I would laugh because I could recognize it, but I'm like, I wonder if she realizes it's all the same story, you know? And so when I write, a lot of what I write does have that underline. Even if I'm writing about an antihero, it does have that kind of like Cinderella underlining kind of feel to it.
Well, that's okay. That's good. That's a good thing. That's a good feeling.
And a lot of it does come from her too. Yeah. Her influence also, you know, in a lot of the stories that she enjoyed and watched and that I watched when I was growing up, that's where a lot of the magical realism comes from. So in the Jedi, Papi, Chulo, and the Power Pansa, there's magical realism. In As the Ashes Settle, the Fire Stirs, there's magical realism.
Obviously, she inspired you tremendously. So have you read anything or listened to anything recently that has inspired you? And I also want to know what inspires you now.
So I recently listened to the audio version of Jenna Fischer's The Actor's Life, and it's a guide for actors, for people that are starting out that don't know the business. And it's more about the business side of it than about the creative side of it. But it's actually really great. It's a really great resource. She gives a lot of information. She gives a lot of inspiration. It's really funny. And I actually really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much that I finished it last week and I started listening to it again this week. I just wanted to kind of like absorb anything that I had missed. But I really loved it. And I really think that anybody who's trying to be an actor should not just listen to this book or read this book, but just look for anything that is, you know, that kind of resource for actors.
Yeah, if the road is already paved, there's no need to be on a dirt path. The road is paved.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm finding a lot of inspiration from other actors, other artists.
Okay, so before we leave, are there any words of wisdom you'd like to leave with us?
Just accepting that not everything is meant for you. And just because you tried out for something doesn't necessarily mean that it's for you. It means that maybe it was for the experience, maybe it's for the connection that you're making, and maybe it's just for you to be able to express yourself artistically that day. And I'm talking specifically about auditions or whatever, you know?
Well, that is a beautiful, very beautiful message for people to use no matter what they do in their life, no matter whether they're actors or bankers. It's a beautiful message and a good way for people to look at themselves and their lives.
Yeah, enjoying the journey rather than like the destination.
It's such a pleasure having you here, Ura, as my guest. Thank you so much for being here. It's been great catching up with you. Just tell people where they can contact you on social media.
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram, and that's Ura Yoana Sánchez. UraYoana Sánchez. And also UraYoanaSánchez.com.
So if anybody wants you to produce, direct, so when they want you, they'll be able to find you. I'm going to include everything in the show notes.
Absolutely. That would be awesome. Thank you, Avis, for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, checking out the podcast. Thank you for inviting me into your space. And until next time, I hope you will continue to thrive, grow, and be kind to yourselves and be kind to others.